Hi friends, welcome to this latest podcast of the Nationalist View, and we have with us again a very special guest, Colonel Miri Eisin. Colonel Miri, thank you so much for being with us. And
Always a pleasure.
yeah, and Colonel Miri is a counter-terrorism expert, and she has been a former advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister. And we're going to talk about the latest developments in Middle East, especially in context of Israel-Hamas war and Israel's, struggle, I would say, basically to protect its people and the onslaught of the Islamic radicalists on Israel. So, Colonel Miri, if you could just share with us a perspective on the ceasefire happened, then the ceasefire broke. We did a podcast on that also, that who broke the ceasefire, and there are still hostages there with Hamas, and now Israel is again back to the military action. Where do you see this war going, and how do you see this hostage crisis ending? Is there a hope that it'll end soon? Because there must be a lot of internal pressure in Israel also on the government to get the hostages released. I also want to ask, is Hamas actually basically planning, do you think, that to release hostages, or is it going to continue to use it as a shield?
When we look at the Gaza Strip now, after a year and almost 7 months of war, we're talking about an area that's been ruled by Hamas, a terror organization designated as such from 2007. So they've ruled there really almost a generation. That's 18 years. That's a very long time. And in the last year and a half, what they had built was their terror military capabilities, not their domestic governance. They weren't trying to create jobs. They weren't trying to make education. They weren't trying to make a better world. They were very much focused, and as years went on, even more so, on building the terror military capabilities, not the ones that they just used against us physically, horrifically and atrociously on October 7th, but in all of the defense capabilities, so that when we came to get the hostages, to destroy their capabilities, they built defenses for over 18 years. And here we are and asking, what about the rest of the hostages? What about the ceasefire? Arun, think about the words. We had to do a ceasefire with a terror organization. We did so to get back the hostages. Why do we have to do a ceasefire with a terror organization? Because that is the weak point of all of us democratic Western societies, not Western, just democratic societies, open societies, that a terror organization can take people, children, anybody, and also soldiers, and then they call everybody soldiers, and use that as a bargaining chip against us. And within that, what Israel has tried to do for the last year and 7 months, and is now, is to get at the hostages and destroy Hamas. There's no easy way to do it. If you want to get back the hostages, you have to cease fire to get them back. If you cease fire, then Hamas rebuilds its capabilities, recruits additional people, smuggles in more weapons, creates more weapons. It's 2.3 million people there. They built the defenses so that if there is a ceasefire, they would be able to recreate their capabilities. And that's the situation we're in, where there is no happily ever after. There is no nice ending. We're not going to be able to destroy Hamas's capabilities without destroying the Gaza Strip, and we're not doing that. We have absolutely done enormous physical destruction. The amount of people that have died there, that we've killed there, is horrible. That is Hamas's defenses. If you don't do it, Hamas not only do the attack into Israel, and what they're trying to do is destabilize us domestically by using the hostages as the different aspect of a bargaining chip. So where we are now is in between those two. We're trying to hit Hamas, and we're trying to negotiate and get back the hostages. To get to the hostages, we're going to have to do a ceasefire. I do not see any situation that Hamas will give them back without there being a ceasefire, because that's the only thing they can demand right now. But they're demanding way more than that. And I remind us all, we're negotiating, not directly, indirectly, but we're negotiating with the devil, with a terror organization that upfront calls for our destruction, did the October 7th attack, calls to do it again, renews those threats, is trying to rebuild its capabilities, and we want to destroy it and to get our hostages back. That's the whole art of counterterrorism, is how can you balance it? The scenario, or what they've built here, Hamas, to me is the scariest part of all. Because if they succeed, Arun, it isn't about Israel-Palestine. It isn't about the Israeli-Palestinian issue. It isn't even about Jews and Muslims. It's way beyond that, because you're talking about a semi-state actor, non-state semi-state actor that uses a terror army in the most horrific way to legitimize itself, to do an attack. And in that sense, I just don't see this as something that has not only a happily ever after, not for the hostages, not for us, not for Hamas, and we cannot succumb to Hamas.
Kalamiri, how do you see United States engagement with Iran? Iran has been, one of the major kind of driving force behind Hamas, behind Hezbollah, behind Houthis, basically all the anti-Israeli forces. And uh, Israel did, take kind of, I would say, a limited direct action against Iran also in this
Did a
ongoing.
bit.
Yeah. So, but now after Trump has come, so now your closest ally, United States, though it is supporting Israel, it continues to support Israel, but it is also engaging with Iran. So, how do you see this impacting the Israeli perspective in terms of this ongoing war?
So you mentioned 2 out of 3 of Iran's strengths, at least in Iran's eyes. One, you mentioned the proxies. That is something that the Islamic regime of Iran have invested in over the last 30 years in Yemen, in Iraq, in Syria, in Hezbollah, and all of those are Shiite proxies. Hamas is not the exact same as a proxy. It's both inspired, but it is Sunni. It was more than happy to accept weapons, training, ideas, ideology. Hamas and the Islamic regime of Iran both share. I'm being very sarcastic now. I'm not sure if that comes through in our podcast, but they share the joint idea of destroying the state of Israel, of destroying what they'll call the Zionist entity. And so the proxies are one for Iran's strength that has been heavily degraded over the last year and a half because of this war. We have completely degraded Hamas. We haven't destroyed it. We've completely degraded Hezbollah much more than we've even done to Hamas. By what we did to Hezbollah, we brought about the absolute change that happened in Syria, and Syria is no longer a safe haven for the Islamic regime, for Hezbollah. That really does a lot for the proxies. It means that the proxy in Iraq does not have that clear line of supplying to be able to go from Iran through Iraq, through Syria to Hezbollah. That has changed the Middle East, meaning that that strength of Iran has been weakened. The second strength that you're mentioning is their aspiration to nuclear capability. I'll just add in that the third pillar of the Islamic regime of Iran's capabilities are their immense, I'm going to call it military arsenal, which is made up out of very sophisticated missiles, ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. They develop and make in Iran a variety of different types of UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles that all have different types of platforms. These are the suicide drones and the not suicide drones. They do the same in the water, what you call unmanned sea vehicles, suicide vehicles that can come and attack shipping. These are all strengths of Iran. So these are the 3. And I would say that the proxies have been heavily hit, that the different weaponry, we showed a capability to at least, we showed that they're vulnerable in our counterattack in April of 2024, and especially in the counterattack in October 2024, because we responded each time that Iran, with those missiles and UAVs and drones, directly attacked us. We protected ourselves and we attacked in Iran. but you're asking about the nuclear. And here I have to say, how do I see it now from Israel? That because we have attacked the proxies, because we have shown the vulnerabilities of their military arsenal in its own way, it poses for the Islamic regime of Iran a question. And the question is, should right now we, the Islamic regime of Iran, go fully nuclear officially and then have the world contend with it? Or should we negotiate? Why? Because they're afraid of the United States. And I add that in. So when I look at that, I absolutely support the United States of America, who is a superpower. We're not. And we look at what we've done without being a superpower. But that the United States should arrive at an agreement that means that Iran will not become a nuclear state. If they arrive at that, kudos to them. Having said that, I, as an Israeli, look at that and go, I don't know if they can arrive at that. And I'm worried that exactly at this stage, right now, they're what you call a threshold state. They have enormous capabilities that within a short time they can turn into nuclear weapons. And so right now, if it fails, those capabilities should not be in the world. Nobody wants the Islamic regime of Iran to be a nuclear country. And so that's where we are right now. It's like we absolutely, I as Miri, absolutely support making sure that Iran does not go nuclear. If it's done through negotiations, fine. But if not, it is a narrow window to be able to make sure that you do something before they become fully nuclear, because then it's already a vastly different arena for the entire world, not just for Israel.
Colonel Miri, with this regime change in Syria, so of course, Iran might not get that much support, but now Turkey is coming into play in a big way. And they have even scouted a number of areas where they can, as we've been, reading from the various news items and the op-eds and the information which is coming from the Middle East, that Turkey is scouting places, to set up even its, kind of a small defense bases in Syria. So, and Turkey is again, an Islamist nation, and in fact, it has been supporting, you know, terror organizations as far as in India also, and we'll talk about that also a little bit later. But how do you see this emergence of Turkey? Because it's now another player which is coming into play and which is an absolutely anti-Israel force. So, how do you see this regime change in Syria in context of growing influence of Turkey?
So the first thing I want to share with everybody is that different from the Islamic regime of Iran, Turkey and Israel still have diplomatic ties. It's very important to emphasize that. We're not talking about an enemy state. We're talking about a country that we used to have very strong ties with. And over the last decade, they have not been as strong, but we still have diplomatic ties. That it's important to state that. We're not yet at the stage that it's an enemy. Turkey has, like Israel, a border with Syria. We have a short border with Syria, but we have a border. It's 90 kilometers. It's a border. And Turkey has, like, I think it's over 1,000-kilometer border between Turkey and Syria. Turkey also has a border with the Islamic regime of Iran, with Iran. And what Turkey did throughout the years of the war inside Syria from 2011, and we're in 2025, is along the border between Turkey and Syria, they went in. Nobody talked about it. For the last 12, 13, 14 years, I've sat and said, Turkey has occupied, nobody likes that word, has occupied areas in northern Syria. And as Turkey would put it, they were doing it to protect themselves against the different forces that were fighting each other inside Syria. From the day that this new regime took over, this new regime, not specifically the HTS part, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which President Ashara is part of, but some of the other groups that are part of it, they were all backed by Turkey. They were backed by Turkey because Turkey is a Sunni country, and these are Sunni organizations. Turkey-backed organizations, I'm going to be careful in what I say, that are not necessarily jihadi terror organizations, okay? They were Islamist, Muslim, more what I'm going to call Muslim Brotherhood, not Al-Qaeda and Islamic State. And I think in our conversation, we should be clear, they're not all the same. They have different aims. They use terror in a different way. The Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan just the other day announced that the Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan is a terror organization and defined as such. Egypt defines Muslim Brotherhood as a terror organization. But Muslim Brotherhood is not defined as such all over, and Turkey backed the Muslim Brotherhood. And so Turkey suddenly became the major player in this new Syria. So the good news is that the Islamic regime of Iran was kicked out. That's good news. That this new regime is not going to allow the Islamic regime of Iran back in. That's good for Syria. That's good for Israel in the sense that they can't supply Hezbollah. The challenge is that Turkey has stepped in. And I emphasize, we have diplomatic ties. Israel can talk directly to Turkey. We're not in a good place right now. We need facilitators because Erdogan, the leader of Turkey, represents in his own way, and I'm very wary of what I'm about to say, a Turkish version of the Muslim Brotherhood. And Muslim Brotherhood, for me, outlawed in Egypt, outlawed in Jordan, outlawed in Syria under Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad is not a good guy. And now it is the living heart of what's taking over Syria. So the fact that Turkey is now taking advantage of that and going into all of the different bases and facilities that the Islamic regime of Iran was in there before, Israel has stated very clearly that we won't allow that. But we don't want to be at war with Turkey. And as I said, we have diplomatic ties with them. So I think that what we want is to be sure that Turkey doesn't suddenly become what Iran was in helping supply the Al-Qaedas and the Islamic States. Turkey has always been against Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. But Arun, they are absolutely there, at least under Erdogan, they back Brotherhood. And that is not good news for the Middle East. And this versions of Muslim Brotherhood are all over Asia. And they're not as extreme as Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, but they're pretty extreme. And they do horrible things in Pakistan, in India, in Bangladesh, and going further east.
Colonel Miri, my last question, you must have read and the whole world has noticed and condemned also a recent terror attack in Kashmir, in
Just
India, in
horrible.
which, yeah, tourists were killed. So I remember we had a conversation in our earlier conversations. You had talked about, that Hamas has on October 7th when it attacked. So there is a new playbook which it has created. And you had said that you wish, nobody should, no other terror organization should be following that playbook. But that is a threat which this Hamas invasion of Israel has posed to the whole world. I see a stark similarity between, what happened in Kashmir and how Hamas did it. How do you see this? If you can, do you see any parallels in this? And so, how do you look at this attack in parallel?
So first, Arun, I want to say so clearly how much my heart goes out to you in India. Such a horrible, horrific terror attack, and exactly a terror attack against innocent people on vacation in a beautiful spot that I've always wanted to visit. And I say that because it's a terror attack. When you say terrorism, I go back into my professional hat and I looked at the attack itself. And I am not a professional about the terror organizations that are in that area. I've had conversations, but what I saw was a cross-border attack, an attack that used different type of weapons, an attack that was done in an area just like the Nova Music Festival against people who were there on a vacation, on a honeymoon, who were there enjoying a beautiful spot in nature and were horrifically, atrociously attacked in such a way. When we talk about terrorism, one of the most regular features is what I call the copycat feature, meaning if a type of attack is successful, all the other terrorists try to copycat it. And what I'm looking at right now and what I'm worried about is that copycat version of looking at a joint border. The other side of the border can have an organization that comes out of the people there, that cross borders, that will say that they're attacking military, but what they're attacking are the people, innocent people inside that area. And those similarities immediately stuck out to me. And what I can only hope is, again, that we're very clear that this cannot be a success, because that also is important in counterterrorism, meaning that Hamas's attack cannot at the end bring out good things for that terror organization. That people won't support it, because at the end, we all want to be against the education and the extremism that brings in those terrorists who are willing to do such an attack. How inhumane, how desensitized can they be to cross the border and attack innocent people in a beautiful spot? And these are the things that we need to be aware of and to try to contend with, and to make sure that it doesn't happen with success, that they have to be stopped. That's true here in Israel against Hamas. And as I say, this is about Hamas, not the Palestinian people. And it's about Kashmir and about terror organizations, not about Pakistan as Pakistan. We have to differentiate, but understand education, extremism, and then at the end, that playbook where they think that they can do something, which is the most horrific aspect ever, terrorism hardcore. And again, my heart goes out to all of the people.
Thank you, Colonel Miri, for taking time out from your busy schedule and sharing this fantastic perspective about a whole range of issues, and bringing in kind of a lot of learnings for people who want to know more about counterterrorism and Islamic radicalism. And to our viewers, thank you for watching, and we'll be back soon with another podcast soon. And Colonel Miri, thank you once again uh, for a
Thank you all, and that we should all have a beautiful April Easter for those who celebrate all of the happy holidays.
yeah. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you.
Thank you.